Hey, man, it's good to see you today. What's going
Um,
on?
Nothing much, man. It's definitely spectacular to be back on the show talking about Auburn football. It's always a funny story when I reflect back on our very first video now 2 years ago, and here we are still doing this thing together. Want to give a big war eagle to all the Auburn fans out there, and definitely glad to be back on the show today. It's always an honor.
Well, the guy that everybody's wanted to talk about the last couple of years has been the quarterback, Bo Nix, but now he's been supplanted by the head coach because anytime you got a new head coach and people are unfamiliar with him since he's not an SEC guy, the thought is, okay, who is this guy? We see his record. We see what he did at Boise State. Hopefully he's going to be able to upgrade our competition within the SEC and take down big bad Bama. Your thoughts about the Bryan Harsin hire, what he has shown us thus far. And of course, we talked about it a little bit before we started to record. You mentioned recruiting, which definitely ended on a sour note under Gus Malzahn, but we see where Bryan Harsin and his staff have picked it up quite a bit.
Bryan Harsin, I think about the day Gus Malzahn actually got fired. I was shocked. I was actually in the middle of a cat nap, and I woke up to the breaking news that Gus Malzahn had gotten fired, and immediately I thought, well, who is Auburn going to get? Gus Malzahn didn't get blown out his last game. It appeared he did this really goofy dance after the game that really gave the indication that he was still going to be there, but next day he's fired. Couple of weeks, you had a lot of names kind of springing out there, anywhere from Hugh Freeze all the way to some of the other names that were out there. And all of a sudden, you see the breaking news that Auburn has hired Bryan Harsin. Now, most Auburn fans would have to think, well, who the heck is this? Turns out Bryan Harsin has been a very successful coach at Boise State. He's one of the third winningest coaches currently in college football. But one thing about it, you have to think that a good portion of the Auburn fan base were relieved that Gus Malzahn was moving on, but still a little doubt about what Bryan Harsin could actually bring to the table. Bryan Harsin did his first presser, and when I tell you that first press conference kind of soothed the minds of the Auburn fan base, he talked a lot of good stuff. He talked a lot about development. He talked about a lot about recruiting. He talked about how he was going to piece together the right staff that could move Auburn into the right direction. And I can't say that he wasn't telling the truth, because I think you're doing a pretty good job when you can get Derek Mason, a former head coach, as your defensive coordinator, and Mike Bobo as, had a lot of success at Georgia, also a head coach himself. So you got a lot of developmental opportunities there. But I think the biggest thing lately, though, that has been different, at least from what the news media outlets put out there, is the fact that Bryan Harsin is kind of doing this inside out version of recruiting. He's actually recruiting very aggressively locally. Matter of fact, he just landed a guy out of Auburn High School. I can't remember the last time Auburn, Auburn University got a guy from Auburn High School that is literally jogging distance away from the school if you're in good shape. So I think the biggest thing that has the Auburn fan base kind of sliding in a direction to where they're pro Bryan Harsin is how aggressively he's recruiting and how he's not appears to be backing down in that regard.
So, yeah, the Tigers finished 8th in the SEC in the 2021 class, 20th in the country, and really the numbers for 2022 at this point are inconsequential. They've got 3 hard commits, including the young man that you mentioned from right there down the street, Powell Gordon, offensive outside linebacker, actually 38th rated at his position.